Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's a slightly green week for me, about 3.8% up, 13k. I would say it's a lot more bullish than that, judging by some of the news, which we'll get to. There's quite a bit this week. Yeah, let's have a look. So just looking first at the coin shares report, we knew this was going to be a little bit more positive. We had a couple of down weeks, and this week we've had 436 million in inflows after the couple of weeks drop. We had the FOMC meeting on the Wednesday, and it looks like we're going to get another positive week in the next report. And this has, noticed it mainly sort of went into the Fidelity US ETF. The Bitcoin one Blackrock one has been very quiet. It's gone sort of obviously into Bitcoin largely. 19 million outflow out of Ethereum, 22 million into multi-asset, always good to see. 3.8 into Solana. That's pretty good. More into short Bitcoin, out of short Bitcoin. So people getting rid of their shorts. And by country, usual story. Australia and Brazil again, small inflows. Canada outflow, Sweden outflow, and a Germany inflow. 27 million into Switzerland as well. That's pretty good. Looking at the more recent. We've had, so coming back to Monday, you sort of had fairly quiet. It's been very quiet from BlackRock, as I say. You sort of had lots and lots of 0 days. You had one small inflow and then 4 0 days again. And yeah, the bulk of it has been going into Fidelity for a little while. Maybe they're sort of recommending it to their own clients, but. Yeah, interesting. Had some outflows out of ARK. They're sort of very volatile. Some inflows into ARK. But yeah, sort of, inflow overall. Next coin shares report, guessing should be about 300 million inflow. So not too bad. On the Ethereum side, it's absolute tumbleweed. As you can see, sort of, a small amount into BlackRock. And complete zeros from everything else. Couple of outflows from the Grayscale ETH, and then 2 zeros from even them. So it does admittedly mean net inflows for 2 days, but I'm sure Grayscale will be back to selling very soon. So on to some of the interesting news. It's very traditional finance this week. We've had Bank of New York Mellon identified as a bank to receive exemption from the rule that the SEC put out, sort of restricting banks from custodying crypto. They're basically saying if you hold it, you have to hold a liability. If you hold it for someone else in custody, then you have to hold a liability for the full value on your balance sheet. So basically meant that the banks would never do that, and was sort of keeping them out of the industry as a whole, really. So all the banks were sort of lobbying the SEC, saying that this is ridiculous and it should be overturned. And yeah, Congress, I think, wanted to overturn it, and it got vetoed by Joe Biden, and hasn't been changed since. But yeah, you've now had the first bank to get an exemption. So you sort of force this rule through, restricting banks from sort of dealing with crypto, basically, and then you start to make the banks exempt, rather than just sort of going back on the rule. Be interesting to see how many banks do end up getting exempt. And then this seems huge. I sort of thought it was a bit quiet on the news, but yeah, I've been seeing a lot of takes on this on Twitter. SEC approving options for the Blackrock spot ETF, IBIT. So it looks like there hasn't been approval for the others, for Fidelity and ARK and that sort of thing. At the moment, this is just the Blackrock one, but you would expect others to follow sort of very shortly. There's no reason, the ETFs are all essentially the same. I don't see why sort of one would get it and one wouldn't. And yeah, this means sort of more approvals coming. You would expect all of them to be putting in for it, and offerings would be approved in short order, as Eric Balchunas says, the Bloomberg ETF analyst. I thought this was a nice little breakdown. Jeff Park here, sort of giving his, various reasons he thinks this is bullish. So he says Bitcoin can now be fractionally banked with ETF options. It's sort of noted that options on the traditional markets, S&P 500 and sort of markets like that, can often be, 10 times or more the value of the underlying market because people just love options these days. And yeah, so Bitcoin and certainly the ETFs have never had this sort of synthetic leverage, if you like, or sort of derivative leverage. Part of the reason sort of traditional markets are allowed to go up so much. You've had options on spot and futures sort of for a while, places like Deribit and CME futures options and that sort of thing. But it's, as they say, it requires a lot of active management. They're normally 1 month futures, so you have to sort of keep rolling them over and stuff. Now you can sort of just buy a 2-year option on the IBIT ETF, and that's it, and just leave it. Not have to keep sort of rolling it over, and it's sort of, on a BlackRock ETF, just feels a little bit more sort of secure. He also says people can now express duration as part of their sort of their bet. So you can't not just buying it, Bitcoin and holding it. You can now sort of bet that it's going to go to a certain point by by a certain time, which again you could do on places like Deribit, but now you can do it sort of in traditional markets on a BlackRock ETF, and that is just much more much more institutional than Deribit options. Again, sort of retail traders get on, places like Bybit and BitMEX and places like that, and can do sort of perpetual trading, which sort of says is akin to a series of 0-day to expiry options that you have to keep rolling over, or behind the scenes they keep rolling over every day. So you pay fees for that, and it's just a sort of very crude implementation where sort of, obviously I'm a fan of options in my Interactive Brokers account. The idea of just buying a 2-year call for a certain price. If you think, say, Bitcoin's going to 100,000, you could bet on the sort of equivalent of that in the ETF by sort of end of next year or 2 years time. So yeah, I think that's a good good side of it. There's also implications in volatility as well. He sort of goes into detail on the Greeks, essentially sort of saying that when traditional markets go up, the volatility tends to come down, whereas with Bitcoin, it's sort of fixed, fixed supply, and the sort of the Greeks there and volatility don't really apply. It's sort of volatile betting on the downside and volatile betting on the upside. So you get this sort of self-fulfilling, upside when it goes up, because people buy more options and it gets more volatile and the options go up and then people have to buy more, and yeah, you get a gamma squeeze, as they call it. And of course, Bitcoin itself cannot be diluted to accommodate this leverage. So in fact, people put a load of bullish bets on, like they have been with GameStop or AMC. GameStop and AMC then diluted shares because the share price got pumped up really high, and it's just an easy way to sort of clear their balance sheets and that sort of thing. But you can't do that with Bitcoin. There is 21 million by the end, and that is it. So if you get a load of leverage, it just happens, and that's it. There's nothing that can be done about it other than, I don't know, maybe sort of trying to pile on futures shorting and sort of manipulation. But it's not as easy as just like GameStop issuing 5 billion worth of new stock. So as he says, in summary, the options market is the first time the financial world will see regulated leverage on a perpetual commodity that is truly supply constrained. And the key word there is regulated leverage. We've already had leverage. You can do sort of 100x if you want on Bitcoin on sort of Binance or place like that, but that is, as they say, perpetual 0-day to expiry options, which is sort of awful. This is, on your E-Trades and on your Charles Schwab and that sort of thing. And it's basically what the large institutions like to use. As of, you're not going to have them going on Deribit or Binance to put options on Bitcoin. So, yeah, it's potentially huge news. Good news for Solana as well. Franklin Templeton looking to launch a mutual fund natively on Solana, exploring, and Citigroup is exploring Solana's capabilities for smart contracts and cross-border money transfers. So they both sort of kind of referenced Ethereum being a bit too slow for this sort of thing, which is sort of a bit of a dig, but probably true. They don't want to use sort of Ethereum and then use a layer 2 to sort of execute this stuff. That just seems a little bit too fractured and fragmented. And they see Solana as sort of being able to just do it on its own. So, yeah, that's potentially pretty big. Solana has always been sort of this financial focused. They've sort of said they want, I think Anatolia said before, he wants it to be NASDAQ on the blockchain, basically, and they're sort of building it to be able to handle that. And sort of with Firedancer, the new client sort of coming sort of later this year, that's looking like it should give it an extra boost, or a boost to transactions per second, basically, sort of making, stocks and various trading potentially possible on chain. That is sort of always what is needed. It can do 2,000, 3,000 transactions per second, but if you're going to start having sort of large transaction volume from traditional finance, you probably need to be doing 100,000, 500,000 transactions per second for high frequency trading and everything that goes on in traditional finance. But I guess that's what these guys are thinking. Citibank sort of looking at it for cross-border payments as well. It's interesting Citigroup don't see something like XRP as the cross-border money transfer blockchain, because that has sort of always been part of its main use case. It was sort of the banker's coin, the traditional finance coin, and it was sort of made for cross-border transactions, FX transactions, and that sort of thing. So a bit surprising to see them sort of going for Solana, but I guess it's got the speed there, and this is sort of what they're building it for, basically. Even more BlackRock as well, as if they aren't going far enough, sort of getting options now. They've also written a white paper, a 9-page white paper that makes the case for the Bitcoin ETF as a unique diversifier that can hedge against fiscal, monetary, and geopolitical risks. So I guess this is partly trying to sort of drum up business, basically, for their own ETF, IBIT, but yeah, they're already sort of have the biggest of the new ETFs, but they want more, I suppose. And yeah, they're sort of posting these little graphs with sort of highlighting the fixed supply and sort of global transfer of value possibility. Saying sort of various forms of money have always been difficult to transact across borders, and it's fully the first truly open access global monetary system. Very interesting. They're sort of posting returns, trying to show that it's uncorrelated. I wouldn't go quite as far as saying it's negatively correlated, as they've sort of suggested, but yeah, at the moment it still seems to sort of go up and down with risk assets, but one day potentially not. They sort of highlighted the long term, sort of 3 years up, 1 year down type price action. So yeah, very unusual. This is sort of often what you see from longer term sort of Bitcoin bulls, threads that show sort of we've got a 2-3 year bull market ahead, but yeah, never this sort of thing from someone like BlackRock. And of course, I suppose we have to talk about MicroStrategy. So they were planning a 700 million share issuance. That was going to be 500 million to pay off existing debt for the first time in quite a while. They've been sort of issuing stock, obviously, just to buy Bitcoin. And now the sort of shares dropped on the news, it seemed, because they were, diluting shareholders just to pay off existing debt. Obviously, that is sort of balance sheet neutral, but I don't really think people care about the balance sheet. They don't seem to sort of take any notice of the debt. People always just quote how much Bitcoin they've got and the market cap, which doesn't sort of allow for the debt. You have to sort of look at enterprise value really. But they ended up increasing that issue to $1.01 billion, and of course they are paying off the 500 million of debt as planned, but also accumulating 500 million worth of Bitcoin. So they already had 244,800 before the announcement, and yeah, this extra 500 million gives them another about 8,000 Bitcoin from the looks of it. So yeah, I do wonder if they sort of increased that sale to, this would get them over 250,000 Bitcoin now, so that's a hell of a milestone. They keep sort of, whenever they're doing their announcements, they keep calling it Bitcoin yield, which I think is completely wrong. It sounds like they're sort of trying to compare how much Bitcoin they have, how much it's gone up versus the amount that they've diluted, but I'm not quite sure how that works, and certainly wouldn't call it yield. Bitcoin doesn't yield anything itself, and them just diluting to buy more Bitcoin doesn't really count as yield, but there you go. So looking at coins for the week, it's been a very mixed bag. The sort of majors are up a reasonable amount. Bitcoin up 3%, Solana up 5.7%, and Ethereum up 5.4%, outperforming sort of for the first time in a long while. A lot of people still saying Ethereum's dead, and anybody holding it is sort of a madman. That could be, signs of a bottom. We don't know. Chainlink down 1%, XRP down 0.3% for the week. Power Ledger up 14.5%, that is the outperformer for the week. Audius up 2%, Internet Computer down 5%, Quant down 3%, Gala up 9.5%, Basic Attention Token up 5%, Polygon is flat, and VeChain up 4.4%. So, yeah, Polygon now below Basic Attention Token and Gala. So that really isn't looking healthy, as we say. Ethereum, sort of getting fragmented with various layer 2s, and sort of people just don't really know where it's going. Or even if it, if all of these layer 2s do work, which one is going to be the biggest, and, if they're sort of accruing any real value, if they're passing revenue back to Ethereum. Yeah, I'm not sort of convinced in that whole ecosystem really. I do like the Solana, just sort of all of it in one place. But yeah, interesting. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you're bullish on any of the news or if you're buying anything, and like and subscribe. See you soon.